everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're here today because, honestly, we're going to completely dismantle a massive, widely held myth. You know the one, the idea that creativity is just this magical gift, some mystical spark reserved only for artists, musicians, or poets who sit around waiting for a muse to strike. Well, the science of cognitive psychology tells us a totally different story. Today, we're actually looking at the architecture of the aha moment. We're going to decode creativity, pull it entirely apart, and show you exactly how this vital skill works. And, more importantly, how you can actually engineer it in your own life. So let's dive right into this. To immediately shatter the idea that creativity is just this one static thing you're either born with or you're not, take a look at this research by Simonton. It shows that creativity is incredibly dynamic. It's totally domain dependent. Like mathematicians and physicists, they tend to hit their creative peaks in their late 20s. But writers and philosophers, they often achieve their most groundbreaking work in their 40s, or even well beyond that. So it's definitely not a single well that just dries up. It is a rigorous cognitive process that actually evolves right alongside us throughout our entire lifespan. Okay, here's a quick look at our roadmap for today. We'll start by defining true creativity, then move on to the 4 different types. After that, we'll break down creative barriers, look at creativity across various domains, and wrap up with the 5-step creative process. All right, let's get into section 1, defining true creativity, way beyond the canvas. It is time to challenge some of those preconceived notions we all have. When we picture creativity, we almost always limit it to paint palettes or, musical notes. But the psychological definition, it's so much more robust than that. Creativity is the cognitive and emotional ability to generate original ideas that actually add value. It's the deliberate process of breaking away from conventional thinking just to produce new possibilities. So it's not simply about being different, it's about seeing the world in a totally new light, making connections that everyone else misses, and ultimately producing something that solves a real problem or enhances society. To really get a grasp on this, we have to look at its core characteristics and notice just how grounded these are. It's not just originality and imagination, dreaming up wild new scenarios. It is equally about flexibility and curiosity. It's that drive to ask why and to adjust your methods when things just aren't working. And equally crucial is the balance between risk-taking and persistence. Think about Thomas Edison for a second. His creativity wasn't just a sudden flash of genius, it was the intense persistence to conduct countless experiments despite failing over and over again. And finally, problem-solving and emotional expression. An architect designing a sustainable building is using problem-solving creativity just as much as a painter is using emotional expression to connect with an audience. At the end of the day, raw imagination is pretty much useless without the persistence to see it through. Moving right along to section 2, let's explore the 4 types of creativity. Now, what's really interesting here is that we need to stop treating creativity like it's a monolith. It actually operates in distinct categories, which perfectly validates our everyday problem solving. Let's walk through them. First up, you have adaptive creativity. This is modifying what already exists, like a software engineer tweaking an app based on user feedback to make it run better. And listen, that is just as valid a form of creativity as our next type, innovative creativity. That's the one we usually think of, creating completely new concepts like Alexander Graham Bell inventing the telephone or Apple creating the iPhone. Then we have exploratory creativity. This one relies heavily on trial and error. Think of a chef testing out some wild new flavor combinations or a scientist testing hypotheses. And finally, expressive creativity, which is driven by this deep need to communicate personal emotion, like a poet sharing a profound personal loss. Recognizing these distinct types really helps you see where your own creative strengths actually lie.
All right, section 3, breaking down creative barriers.
Every great story has a villain, right? And in the story of innovation, the villains are those internal and external forces that absolutely crush free thought. You can practically feel the stress radiating from this idea. The giant ticking clock, the flying papers everywhere. This perfectly represents some of our biggest cognitive barriers, the pressure of time and the fear of failure. When we're completely overloaded with information in our fast-paced digital age, or when we are absolutely terrified of criticism, our cognitive ability to take risks just completely paralyzes. We fall right back into rigid thinking. We stick to conventional solutions because, well, it feels safe. But safety, that is the ultimate enemy of innovation. So how do we defeat these villains? We do it by contrasting these barriers with actionable psychological breakthroughs. If fear of failure and rigid thinking are the barriers, the breakthrough is cultivating a growth mindset. It's about viewing failures not as a dead end, but as absolutely essential learning opportunities.
If a rigid environment is stifling you, the antidote is fostering open-mindedness by intentionally leaning into diverse perspectives. And honestly, perhaps my favorite solution, incorporating play and fun. I know it sounds almost too simple, but a playful attitude seriously reduces stress, encourages free expression, and it directly dismantles rigid thinking. Play literally unlocks new, innovative cognitive pathways.
Okay, on to section 4, creativity across different domains. Now that we know how to foster creativity, let's take a look at how it manifests out in the real world. On one hand, we have the classic expression of creativity, abstract art. Think Picasso, completely breaking visual norms to evoke a raw emotion. But then, on the other hand, look at technological innovation, with giants like Apple and Tesla. Engineering a self-driving car or a revolutionary smartphone actually requires the exact same foundational cognitive processes, originality, flexibility, and problem-solving, as painting a masterpiece. It's literally the exact same human capability, just applied to an entirely different set of tools. And the applications are truly endless. Just think about architecture, where someone like Frank Gehry balances wild, sweeping innovation with strict structural practicality to create something as iconic as the Guggenheim Museum. Or literature, where J.K. Rowling builds entirely immersive worlds from total scratch. It even drives healthcare. The incredibly rapid development of the COVID-19 vaccine was a total masterclass in exploratory and problem-solving creativity, all done under immense pressure. So this isn't just academic psychology. This is the literal engine that drives every single industry out there. And finally, section 5, the 5-step creative process. All right, this brings us to the climax of our explainer. Earlier, I promised to reveal the literal cognitive blueprint for engineering an aha moment. And well, here it is. The absolutely crucial point here is that creativity is not just a random lightning strike. It is a highly systematic journey. Step 1 is preparation. This is the hard, gritty work of gathering info, doing research, and deeply understanding the problem. Step 2 is incubation, and honestly, this is wild. This is where you actually step away. You go for a walk, you take a shower, you just let the ideas simmer in your subconscious without any deliberate focus. This is where crucial subconscious cognitive mapping takes place. Then step 3 is illumination. This is that famous aha moment, and it only happens because you allowed step 2 to occur. The breakthrough finally surfaces. But wait, you aren't done yet. Step 4 is verification, where you rigorously test the logic to make sure this great idea actually works in reality. And finally, step 5 is implementation. That's bringing the idea to life and actually sharing it with the world. So, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought. Take a look at your biggest current project, whether it's at work or in your personal life. Which stage of this 5-step process are you currently stuck in? Do you maybe need to go back and do a little more preparation? Or perhaps are you just grinding way too hard and you actually need to step away and allow for some incubation so that illumination can finally strike? Well, you've got the blueprint now. The ability to unblock your own potential is entirely in your hands. Thank you so much for joining me on The Explainer today, and I'll catch you in the next one.